Hello and welcome to the latest in our series of podcasts, Reframing the Future. Today's podcast is with Helen Isherwood from AD. She's going to be talking to us about leading a digital disruption in our nation's heating. It's a fascinating topic and I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So welcome, Helen. Our conversation today has come about from an introduction by Matthew Webber. He's the Group Managing Director at AD. I heard him speak at a business roundtable event and got in touch as I felt the vision at AD and the direction you were taking was a really great topic for a longer conversation because you're leading a digital disruption in the nation's heating. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at AD.
So probably just to give you a quick overview of who AD is. We've been in existence for over 15 years now. We started off as a very small business based on a gentleman that came up with a fantastic invention about how to protect heating systems and prevent corrosion, which actually means that you get better efficiency in your heating system and less likely to see failure of your boilers. From there, the business has grown, and we're very proud of the fact that we now provide water treatment heating solutions for heating systems across the world.
You're a local firm, aren't you? You're based in Gloucestershire?
Yes, we are in Cheltenham, and over the years we've expanded. We now have laboratories in Sittingbourne and in Slough, and we have offices over in France and the States. We've also recently expanded into China and have two colleagues out there as well. So certainly it's a growing business and very exciting times for us. My role at AD is that I am the innovation director. I'm responsible for marketing, product and development, and I could only ever have dreamt of having a role like this because it covers all the things that I love doing. And I think really exciting at AD is that I have the support of the board to invest in innovation that not only allows us to do the day-to-day things, but also to do some really exciting disruptive technologies that set us apart.
It really does, hence our conversation today, because that's the real topic that you're going to bring to life for us. So set the scene for us a bit. So what are the current challenges at AD?
Well, there's always lots of challenges, aren't there, in any business. And I think really, having created the market in magnetic filtration kind of 15 years ago, we are very established, and actually typically in the heating industry, the brand is very well known and has a very good reputation. And we pride ourselves on providing quality products and services and guidance to ensure heating systems and boilers are protected. Unfortunately, if you don't work within the industry, most homeowners would have no idea that corrosion in their heating system will over time reduce their efficiency in their heating systems, and therefore they'll start spending more on heating, and it's also likely to increase the risk of their boilers breaking down. I'm in awe of the heating engineers that I've met through work who are really conscientious about their job and they want to do a good job for their homeowners. For AD, there's a couple of really simple challenges. Firstly, we need to ensure that heating engineers are well trained so they understand best practice and can do the best job they can for their homeowners, but also to help homeowners appreciate why they want to protect their heating systems and why it's important that they allow their heating engineers to do a good job and don't just look for the cheapest quote when they're trying to get their work done. And this is where technology is already paying off, because we've started to introduce, through innovation, we've started to introduce some new tools for engineers that help them to demonstrate to homeowners the issues within their heating system right in front of their eyes, and so that they can also track the performance of that heating system remotely. So we're starting to put tools in the hand that allow everyone to do a better job and to benefit. Of course, the other thing for us is that it's important that we continue to differentiate ourselves from competitors. There's lots of companies in the market now that are offering similar solutions to us. In truth, we can often, through our reputation and the spec of our products, we can naturally compete and succeed against others on the market. But you can't underestimate the value of the innovation work that we're doing to allow us to keep that clear space between others and our competitors. And ultimately, like any business, AD is here to make money. We have to make money, and innovation is a very important part to play in ensuring the business future. And so innovation isn't just about the really exciting new technologies that we bring to market for customers and homeowners, but it's also about what we do internally. So what can we do to improve our own internal efficiencies? And so that's just as important. As a business, of course, revenue and growth are the key measures. But the other thing that I think is really important is that we create an engaging and exciting environment for our staff. And actually, the use of technology and giving them the opportunity to contribute to improving technology in the way that business works gives them a lot of excitement and just really gives them an opportunity for their own personal development.
That's a really brilliant overview of the firm and where you're at. And what I really like there was one of the strategies in this Wise Pivot framework that we've been talking about at HGKC and using to help explain and bring to life people's businesses is the one about being, this hyper relevancy that you have, which is about knowing how to be and stay relevant to your customers, and by sensing and understanding the market and their changing needs. Some of the things you talked about was how you're market focused, innovating and bringing new products to market. So let's explore that a little bit more.
So I'd say as a business, we're really lucky because we're still small enough that we can adapt quickly and we can make decisions very quickly. And I think that's really helpful along the way, because as you know, with technology and innovation, you're having to make choices very quickly and move on. And I think the other thing for us, and maybe this is one of the challenges I should have mentioned, is we never have any problem with coming up with ideas and things that we can do. And actually, probably our biggest challenge is how do we narrow those down and prioritise them? So that's the starting point. I think in terms of keeping market focused, we're very fortunate that we are well connected, and it's quite straightforward for us to remain connected. We have teams that are on the ground working daily with installers, speaking to them, seeing how they're doing. We employ ex-heating engineers to work with us. The product team spends time on the road. And also we have a loyalty scheme for our heating engineers, and they're a great pool of advisors that we can go to with ideas and get their immediate feedback. And I guess the other thing with social media is there's just no shortage of heating engineers that want to share their ideas. Some of them you might not want to hear, some of them are less than favourable, but actually, lots of really good ideas that we continue to monitor so that we get. I think when you're in a business, it's very easy to get a bit of an ivory tower of this is the only way to do it. And it's really important that we continue to listen to how other people want to work. Also, we do engage with our customers as we go through the development cycle. So for example, with ProCheck, which is the water test app that we've just launched, we had scores of engineers actually using the app for months before we launched it. Of course, sometimes then you hear things that maybe you didn't want to hear, but I think actually overall the feedback we got, the honest feedback, as I'm convinced led to us launching a much better product than it would have done if we'd just been on our own. One of the interesting things for us though is that some of the things that we're doing now, so historically we would have been a business that built a box, it went through the merchant and out the door. So we were box shifting really in a very kind of single transaction. But where we're moving to now is creating more of a package of a product and maybe a chemical and services, and then bundling that with some recurring revenue models for the company. And actually that's a very different mindset. And there isn't really a precedent within our own industry of how that works. So we have had to look beyond our own immediate industry and look wider and see how people have done that. And when we have done that, we have absolutely, again, gone back to our own market then to see whether these ideas we've had are crazy or whether actually they will work. And so, and then it's a case of iteration after iteration. I think the other thing actually that's really been important is that as you move into these more complex kind of service orientated models, we have had to think much more about that end-to-end user journey. So not just about what happens when they open the box now, but right from the beginning, if we're going to market and we're talking about tariff models, then can they understand them? And if we give them a product that requires them to create new processes, are we giving them a product that it's simple for them to integrate into processes that they're using? How are they going to reorder stock from us? So there's so much more that we have to think about. So now, and I think this has been a big learning for us, is actually you're no longer just thinking about the technology that you're launching, but actually you have to put as much time into thinking about the processes and the technology and the systems that are going to sit behind the delivery of that. And it's been really interesting because I think, that's been a big learning curve for us as a business to firstly accept you have to do that and then work out how to do it. But I think, it goes very well. And actually, I think really good learning for us. And it's amazing really what the team has achieved. And there's nothing like learning on the job in my view. So, and we've learned.
To my next question really, which is, about having a workforce where they're the advantage, they're at the heart of your success. And you have senior leaders through all levels of the workforce support that as well. And they're highly expert and really focus on the business too. I mean, you're operating in this very competitive marketplace. So tell us a little bit about that sort of AD journey and what you think about this future of work, teams.
So I guess really like any small business, that started off with one person with massive foresight and amazing energy, that from that point, small business, we've had to grow up really as we've got bigger and as we've started to do, extra products, and we've gone into new markets and new geographies. And so then, it does create a change. We've been very lucky though, because actually we've still got within the workforce some of the earliest staff that were involved. And I think that's been really important because that's helped us keep that original ethos that the business had. But of course, over time, we're doing new things, we're doing things differently, and we have had to bring in new people with more specialist expertise. And that's just a natural part of growth. But it's interesting to see actually that it's kind of a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy as well, because as you bring in new talent and you start doing more innovative work and you start bringing more exciting products to market, it then makes it a little bit easier to recruit new talent, because suddenly from a time when would it have been very sexy to work for a company that was shipping out plastic pots with a magnet in? Well, for some people, yes, for some people less so. But as we start talking about, we're sensing, we're monitoring, we're reading data, we're creating apps, and actually you start to see, lots of other people that become more interested in it. And it has been very good for us to drive that talent pool within the business. And we are based in Gloucestershire. So, not always going to be the core of where that sort of expertise sits. So another thing is you have to accept, what better than the pandemic to help us understand and prove that it doesn't matter if someone's sitting somewhere else, they can equally do a good job.
Providing this competency base,
yeah, absolutely,
attracting talent from different areas than you would have in the past.
Yeah. And then what I really love is that we bring the new talent in, but actually as a business, we've got some people that are so knowledgeable and so passionate about what they do. And then when you combine that together and you take those people with that knowledge and that expertise, but you then bring people in that know how to turn that into something, it's amazing then what you can then create. And then you get this really good kind of pollination of ideas across people. And that's where then we have our project teams. And project teams are made up of people from right around the business. We'll have someone from sales, someone from operations, there'll be some engineers, there'll be some plumbers involved. And it's all about trying to come together and create something good. And I think really as a team, we've kind of got quite a well-oiled machine now in how we run these processes and these product developments. But the team is at the core of that. And every product and project we deliver is very much a shared responsibility and effectively, I think, a little bit of a reward of everyone working well together. I think other things as a business, a part of growing up is, and I think this is something that AD should be very proud of, is that we've really invested in development for the teams. So we embarked on this kind of collaborative training program delivered by a third party who've been fantastic. But we all had to go on a little bit of a self-discovery. There was a lot of time for self-reflection, a lot of time for kind of more 360 views. But I think we've all learned and we are seeing the benefit. So one of the hard lessons I think for the board to learn was that they had to stop micromanaging. They had to be willing to delegate. And that's really helped, because the net result of that is now the management team is much more confident about what they do and feel that, you know, they've got a part to play. And so now they're doing, you know, a fantastic job of running the business. And I think across all levels, it was a great way of identifying new stars in the business, people that we can bring ahead. So I think there's been lots of good things. I think that the change hasn't stopped. I still think there's more that we need to do. And I think technology is driving this. One of the things that I'm really excited about is introducing now is a slightly different mindset. We've always followed a very traditional kind of product development path, which is being used, I think, by most companies I've ever worked for in some shape or form. But I'm really interested now, and it has worked for me in a previous business where you effectively, like I said before, we've got all these ideas.
Yeah.
We need to find a way of whittling them down. How do we funnel them? But how do we do that quickly so we can be quicker to market or just quicker to roll things out? So we're starting on this journey of creating really tiny little teams, still cross-functional. And the idea is you give them an idea, or you don't even give them the idea, you ask them to come up with the idea. And you give them maybe, you know, a very short sprint of time, so maybe a week. And in that time, they've got to see how far they can go.
Yeah.
Now, when I've done this before, sometimes you're successful. Sometimes you get to the end of the week and you go, it's never going to work. But I think that's good. I think I have much quicker way of rolling things in or out. I guess the challenge, and I know this is the same for other businesses as well, is you're using resource up, you know, you're using time, they're not doing something else. And for the finance team, that's really quite hard to swallow because, you know, time's money, isn't it? So I think it's a little bit of a learning exercise that sometimes you kind of
have to build that into your budgeting, into your finances, to say that we have to have this as part of that product development roadmap strategy and plan for that time. But look for the learning outcomes, look for the skills development, look for the other things that come out of that time, because, you know, we often say you learn more from your failures than from your successes.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. So in a previous company I worked with, we introduced on Fridays for the software developers they'd have like a morning or a day when they could do whatever they wanted. And the amount of good stuff that came out of that, not just in terms of things that we could take to market, but just goodwill and motivation, I think was really good. So, and then I think the other thing for us as a business is that through the delivery of the new products, we are creating access to data.
Yeah.
And the fantastic thing about that is that data in its own right is another thing that I think will really help AD progress, because we start making our decisions based on facts and, you know, being a little bit better informed in what we do. So I think all in all, you know, it's looking really good. And I think the thing I always say to my team is, at AD, you'll never be bored.
It sounds like it. So internally, there's this huge strength and opportunity. What I'd like to turn to next really is to think about that external network that you have, you know, the ecosystem that you build around you to help you do that, because we know that's one of the defining strategies within the most successful people who are pivoting and reframing their businesses for a more technologically disrupted future. So what are some of the things that you've been doing at AD?
It's such a good question, because I think that's very much at the heart of what AD are about and trying to achieve. So I think within the business, we have core strengths. And in terms of how to look after a heating system, it's something that we know inside and out, but there's other things that we don't know so much. So I think the first thing is not to be afraid to go out and look for help, and make sure that when you work with people, you work with the best of the best, so that between you, you're creating something better. And, you know, actually, if we were to continue doing what we do now, I think we would be really successful. But I think working outside of our own box, and not just with other developers, but also working with our customers, is that's when I think we'll be even more successful. I think working together, we've got an opportunity to really change, to really create change for homes and for commercial properties. And kind of think about, imagine if you were a homeowner, and if all those different companies that happen in the background, you know, the one that supplies you with your doorbell, the one that supplies you with your sound system, the one that supplies you with your heating, your electricity, all those different things. Imagine though, if there was a world when all of those people were working together to create a really smooth system for you, so nothing ever went wrong in your house. So it's all done and all
great
in a way. And because of the data that different companies are collecting about performance within that property and what's happening and what's not happening, is that I don't think it's impossible for us to get to that. Try and do it on our own, we'll do it forever. Try and do it with other people, then, and I think we will. But I guess the thing is, and what we find is that when you're wholly responsible for your own roadmap and your deliveries, then actually it's quite straightforward. Sometimes you slow down, sometimes you don't, but you're in control. But when you start working, and even when you work with, you know, a third-party development company, you still have an element of control over it. When you start working with customers or wider partners, then you have to accept that everyone's kind of got their own priorities. They're all working to different tunes, and therefore those projects are going to take longer.
And you have to negotiate that territory much more about outcomes and milestones and contribution. You know, is everybody contributing equally to this? You know, how do we protect this in terms of IP? What are we actually going to do with this? This whole new range of issues arise out of it.
It does, but I guess the thing is you kind of need to step back and think about what the overall is of what you can achieve. So, you know, even some of the simple things we've done now actually mean that for our heating engineers, they've got access to information that they never had before. And that's allowing them to have a better service, give their customers a better service, which, you know, when you're a heating engineer, it's all about word of mouth. So, you know, you can add value very quickly. And I think the other thing is that you kind of sometimes need to look at the bigger picture and not just think about what you're trying to achieve, but what does the overall industry want to achieve? Because actually, if we work together and we use the data that we're all collecting, then actually you've got knowledge to make improvements. And in this way, especially in this industry, if we can find ways to make heating systems run more efficiently, for example, then actually not only is the homeowner getting less, you know, lower bills, but actually the bigger picture is we're using less energy as a country or wherever, and therefore it's, you know, we're contributing then to a better environment. So it's baby steps, isn't it?
In that context, if everybody was doing the same thing, what can we do that would have a net positive impact, not just as a benefit for our customers, but a benefit from the planet? So if it's purpose, people, planet, you know, all the P's, then we would be in a different place altogether if people adopted that mindset in collaboration and in business.
Yeah, I think we'll get there. I think you get this big vision and then you think, how the hell are we going to do this? Then we try and break it down into smaller bits of what we can and we can't do, and then plan it out. And then I guess the other piece to it is a lot of what everyone's doing now, there's no standards to follow. You know, everyone can choose different technologies. So I think we're still at a point where people are having to make quite difficult choices. It's not there written for you that you do this or you do that. And so, you know, there's going to be some time really before that beds down. And I guess it's that thing you learn is that, and I think probably quite difficult for companies like AD that have traditionally been very production based, is you don't spend the money anymore on a product once and it goes out the door and that's it. But actually, once you get into kind of true innovation and the use of software and technology, it's going to be iterative and it's never really going to end, just going to continue to improve.
That brings me really to my final question about the technology aspect, because it's definitely seen as a differentiator, those that are adopting and looking at integrating technologies in a way that they hadn't perhaps before, and how they enable the innovation. You've talked a little bit about that, but it would be interesting to see what you think about how that's working in context. Any feedback on what's working, not working, what's hard?
I think probably the hard bit is determining what to do when and what's the best use of your money at what times. When I think of the operations team, it's a minefield really, in terms of and operations, and also even our laboratories, is there's so much technology out there, and you could just say, okay, let's throw a lot of money and try and automate everything at once. But is that the right thing to do? There's balance, I think, and so I think that's a challenge, is not trying to do it all at once, being quite sensible about your approach, and that you invest it and that you do it in the right order. So I think that's something that we are very mindful of, but it is certainly something that it's so important that we do it, because the world is changing, and to be able to compete, you've got to be sharper, you've got to be more efficient, you've got to be able to up your service. And I think we really have noticed that as we kind of have moved from these very traditional products to creating services. So I think I mentioned it earlier, but actually one of the things that we've learned is that it's not just about the service you're selling, it's the infrastructure that sits underneath that. And of that infrastructure, what can we do to try and automate as much of it as possible? Because you don't want to create a beast that's then going to create a shed load of work for your teams underneath and keeping it going. So I think it's quite interesting when you're thinking now about, from a product development point of view and service development, is you've almost got to think about it in two chunks. There's what's the piece going out to market, what's the piece that needs to be inside the business to make that work. So I think we're really lucky at AD, because I think the board is extremely receptive and encouraging of the use of technology.
Yeah.
Balance, isn't it? Where do you spend your money and when do you get the best return?
That's a really great summary, and a great way for us to sort of end our conversation today. You've got a really inspiring and supportive board, a great mindset in your organisation, really positive culture around developing products, and great partnerships and collaborations with your partners and your customers and your end users, and really purposeful in your approach. Helen, thank you for a fascinating run through your work at AD and the spectacular work you do at AD too. And it's been a wonderful conversation today.
Thank you, Tim.
You're welcome. AD have an excellent website, and you'll find lots more information about the innovations and some of the new products and services they're bringing to market. And also they have an excellent blog. So I do recommend that you visit www.adey.com and find out much more about what Helen and her team have been up to. Thank you for listening.